Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. You have found us here on a special edition of Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 14 novels of suspense, and I just sent in number 15 yesterday. I'm so proud of myself for that. My newest book is called The House Guest. It is sort of Gaslight meets Thelma and Louise, and I hope you will look for it. It just went into a second printing after 6 days on sale, so I am thrilled. Thank you for your support. It really means a lot to me, you all. I'm going to click over here. If I look over here, I'm looking at your comments. Thank you so much for coming. Look at everybody is here so far. Love this. And one of the ways I'm celebrating today is by getting to chat with Kristen Bird, whose new book, her second novel, I Love It When You Lie, is just out. And you all, it's marvelous. It's immersive. It's gorgeous. It's tantalizing. It's tempting. It's kind of life-changing. It will have you asking a lot of questions about your own lives, I think, and asking yourself what you would do in this situation. And if you have sisters, it will especially speak to you. It is I Love It When You Lie by Kristen Bird. Is that not a great title as well? We'll talk to Kristen about that. Kristen, welcome to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. How are you? Where are you?
I'm doing well. I'm in my home outside of Houston, Texas. I just got done teaching my ninth graders this morning about an hour and a half ago, and now I'm here at home.
What did you teach?
I'm teaching 9th and 12th grade English. So today was block day with my ninth graders, and we are teaching Celestine's Little Fires Everywhere.
Oh, that's so, I mean, it must be so much fun for you to see. I mean, I thought my life's ambition, I have to say, for a long time was to be a high school English teacher, because I thought seeing the moment when a student gets it, when there's some moment of understanding. Do you see that in your students?
Yes, we actually, for the last unit of the year, we start handing over discussion to them so that it's more student led. So every week I'll inch it up by a minute or two. So today, after spring break, we're in our second week after spring break, we discussed for 9 minutes and they entirely led discussion. And it's really neat to get to see what they're noticing in the text and the nuanced details that they're able to bring out. So that's very rewarding to me.
Yes. And I wonder how we thought about, you and I went to high school at much different times, but I'm thinking about the teachers who changed my life about reading them. I remember Mr. Thornburg, who taught me about Shakespeare, and not just reading it, but being it and understanding it and the rhythm of it and the music and the writing and the storytelling and the characters. And I wonder if do you think about whether your students will say, oh, I remember I had Miss Bird. She taught me what?
Yeah, I do hope that they remember, especially when we're teaching texts that have really complicated issues in them. I hope that they can find a way to relate it to their life or to use it as a window to see into other people's worlds. And one thing that we talk a lot about in my department is how we can help create empathy, because that's not something you can just teach. But by reading about other people's lives, even if they're fictional, often they're based in reality, then they can learn that empathy.
Yeah, I was reading an article recently, you probably saw it, about that reading fiction is something that really induces empathy in people. Because it makes you walk in someone else's shoes, do you think? Is that why? Solve someone else's problems?
I think so. I also read something about how neurologically, when we're reading about other experiences, we have certain parts of our brain that light up that make us feel as if we are in the experience. So I thought that was really interesting.
Very much so. And my brain lit up like crazy when I read I Love It When You Lie. And I know all of yours will as well. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, I do too. Pamela Fry-Priest says, I love the title. I think it's really tantalizing. If you are new to Crime Time and A Mighty Blaze, let me just tell you very quickly. Hey, Diane from Oregon. Let me tell you very quickly that A Mighty Blaze was started 3 years ago now, which we don't even want to talk about, at the beginning of the pandemic, by the marvelous powerhouse duo of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep our little neurons bursting, to keep our minds working, to keep us talking about books and discussing books and discovering new authors and seeing old favorites as well, and maybe making some new favorites. And that is why we are here today with the fabulous Kristen Bird, whose newest book is called I Love It When You Lie. Yes, Leisha says, what a beautiful cover of I Love It When You Lie, that golden rose that's broken with the thorn, as you see. I can never figure out which way is up. Anyway, let me quickly introduce to you the fabulous Kristen Bird. She has a master's degree in literature and teaches high school English in Houston, Texas, where she lives with her husband, 3 daughters, and their rescue lab. What's your rescue lab's name?
Holly. Her full name that my daughters gave her when they were young is Holiday Glitter Sparkles Bird. But we call her Holly.
Holiday Glitter Sparkles Bird. That is quite, you know what? I love that. I completely love that. That's good. We had an Irish setter when I was growing up. His name was Roderick St. John Aaron Sean. I think we all kicked into it. It's not as good as your dog. It's not as good as Holly's name, but it's up there. It's up there. So finally, and we want to remind you that we're giving away, well, not we, but Mira and Kristen are giving away a copy of I Love It When You Lie to one of you lucky commenters. When I look over here, I'm looking at the comments. People are loving the dog's name. Cute name, says Shannon Hansen. Great name, says Anissa Armstrong. That's and Alicia says, hello, fellow Texan, Kristen Bird.
Oh,
so,
hello.
You have a sister. You have a sister here. Susie Baldwin says, gorgeous cover. And Leisha, let me quickly says, I really loved your book, The Night She Went Missing. Lots of twists and turns. So yay, you have fans and you have soon to be fans for I Love It When You Lie. So tell us a little bit about this book.
Sure. It's set in the North Alabama foothills of the Southern Appalachian Mountains. And it is the area where I grew up. It's about 3 sisters who return home for their beloved grandmother's funeral. And each of them bring with them a problematic man in their life. And by the end of the weekend, they decide that one of those men should be in the ground with their grandmother.
It's so great. It's so wry and it's so, if I can say, Southern. Your voice is gorgeous. It's witty and it's dark. And it's also has so much to talk about in this book. And we'll talk about that. But tell us about your main characters. There are 3 sisters and a sister-in-law. Talk about them and their relationship.
Sure. Tara is the oldest sister and her husband is a minister. She has had a little trouble she's been stealing from the church. So she's stolen by this point thousands of dollars from the church. And that's something that she obviously wants to keep hidden. And then there's middle sister. Her name is June. She has been struggling through infertility. And you find out in her very first chapter that by the end of the night, when she gets off of her shift as a postpartum nurse, she'll be taking home a baby with her. And then you find out that Clementine, the youngest sister, she's 29 years old. She's finishing up her degree in literature, her PhD, and she's dating one of her professors who is also married. So each of these 3 sisters are bringing a lot of baggage with them that weekend. Then you have Stephanie. She is the outsider. She's from up north. She's that woman, that married into the family that is the outsider.
The Yank, they call her.
Mm-hmm. And her perspective is a bit in the future, just a few days in the future, and then the timelines merge because she is sitting at the sheriff's office in Willow Gap, Alabama, telling him her version of events and why a man has gone missing in her own words.
I mean, it is. You can hear you all who are listening. When I look over here, I'm looking at your comments. Melissa T says, I love the sound of this. And yes, and this book has music and voice and rhythm and this droll Southern storytelling. I wonder about the 3 sisters, Tara and Clementine and June. How did you make character studies for them? Did they evolve as you wrote them? How did you decide to pick their secrets and weave their stories together?
I'm very much a discovery writer, so I write to discover who my characters are. So until about 30,000 words in, I actually don't even feel like I know them yet. So that's the process that I went through with this. I also am a family of 4 children, and there are 3 sisters and 1 brother. My brother is actually the youngest. In this, there's also a brother, of course, who's married to Stephanie, and he's the oldest. So I drew on that kind of sibling bond that I have with my own sisters and brother. And I also mimicked some of their personality quirks on my siblings because that helped me to make them like full-bodied characters.
I have 3 sisters and a brother as well. So I can completely see this unfolding. How did you, and I know this is sort of but how did you pick their names? Were there always Clementine and Tara and June?
They were, and I really wanted Southern sounding names. One of my best friends that I teach with at school, her name is Tara, and she has the sweetest Southern lilt to her voice. She's from South Carolina, but she can also tear people apart if she has to. Only bad people, of course. So she was really the inspiration for that name. And then I've just always loved the names June and Clementine. They felt very Southern to me. Mm-hmm.
And from the reader's point of view, we can envision them so perfectly. I marked it here, I think, the moment that she goes into, oh my golly, the moment that she decides to steal the baby. And I can't, well, you all have to read it. I mean, it made me laugh out loud. The book made me laugh out loud. And it also really made me think. I think you're so wise from a writerly point of view as well, to bring the family together to something that's supposed to be sad and an emotional experience anyway. So they're drawn together in grief and memory. Why was that important to you?
I had the experience actually of losing my grandmother during the pandemic when I was writing this. She knew that I was writing it, and she knew that I was writing about home, which was really comforting to me. But I think that loss was helped me empathize with my characters and the loss that they would be going through. I also thought that I wanted these characters to feel like people you could know, even though they do find themselves in a bit of an extreme circumstance. And so it was important to me that they feel real on the page, and that the reader could feel empathy for them as well. And so going through a loss like that, I think, speaks to a universal kind of experience. We've all lost someone that we love.
Yes, and I agree with Pamela. I'm sorry for your loss, Kristen, says Susie as well. That's hard. My grandma Minnie taught me how to crochet and how to type. And I have to tell you that every day at the computer, I think thanks, Grandma. You know, I'm happy. I love that. I love that. She was also one of the grandmas who would leave ingredients out of recipes, so you could never make them. Truly. And after she died, we found her recipe box, and I thought, oh, now we'll get to figure out how to make that wine cake that we always loved. And her recipes had no amounts. So it would just say flour, sugar, wine, almond. So you couldn't possibly make it. Anyway, digression. But what the characters coming to a funeral of someone that they have known all their lives also allows you as an author to bring out the characters' personalities in how they view this situation. What was that like to write? I mean, did you channel each character as you wrote her?
I started with the character of June, actually, who's the middle sister, and I thought that she would be the main character, basically. And then I realized that she had an older sister, Tara, and then she came a little more to the forefront. And then I realized that they had baby sister Clementine, and I actually didn't add the sister-in-law until I was almost done with the 3 sisters stories. So really, it was almost like a tapestry that I was weaving together. I knew June well, and then I knew Tara well, and then I knew Clementine well. And so it was just a process. I say it's like a tapestry, or like bricklaying for me, one brick at a time.
Yes. And then you see, or a puzzle piece, and then you see what the picture that you're making is as you add more puzzle pieces. One of the puzzle pieces, of course, is murder. The fabulous Lisa Gardner gave you a wonderful endorsement saying, a wicked blend of family secrets, sibling resentment, and small town ways. And then she says, wondering how to get away with murder? The Williams sisters know. First of all, when you read that from Lisa Gardner, what did you think?
I was blown away. My editor sent it over to me, and immediately I got on email and I just sent her a heartfelt thank you, for taking time to read, but then also to say just such kind things. And I really appreciated that she got the novel because she sent a reply back and just told me kind of what her takeaways were. And it's always rewarding to see any reader, but especially a writer that you admire so much, really understand what you're trying to accomplish on the page.
Yes, Lisa Gardner. We should tell everyone Kristen is having problems with her life.
I am.
It is intermittent, but you look fine now. So
Thank you.
don't need to change a thing. It's all good. It's just, I think that machines know when we're trying to do something that we care about. So they just think, watch me, I'm going to break right now. But the murder element of the story is so dry and funny, and tantalizing and tempting and sort of beguiling, because who hasn't thought about this? Why did you decide? And also the juxtaposition of murder during a funeral. Talk a little bit about that life and death stakes and how the sisters think about it.
Yeah, when I actually started writing this novel, the image that I started with was the opening image on page 1 of the three sisters, their arms entwined around one another as the sun rose, and them standing over a fresh grave. So I knew that I wanted someone else to be in the grave with their grandmother. And I knew that it had to be one of the men in their lives because, like you said, I think that sense of female revenge is something that it's kind of hot on the page right now. A lot of people are writing out their frustrations about what things are like for women in a lot of parts of the world right now. And I think that that's how I came to that image. And I also knew that I wanted to deal with death and loss because, again, it's a universal theme, but it's also, after going through the pandemic, something that was just really on my mind. Yeah.
So I love that you're talking about that you started with that image. Mm-hmm. When you saw, I don't know exactly how to put this, but when you saw that image, were you trying to write a book and think about what to write? Or did you see the image and think, oh, that's my book?
I was actually thinking about what I should write next. Mm-hmm. And I was taking the adage to heart, write what you know. And so I thought, I really want to write about my sisters and that relationship that we share because we have a very tight bond. And as I was thinking through, what lengths would we go for one another? That is the image that came to mind. And then also growing up on Sand Mountain, that's the name of the county where I grew up, and the mountain where I grew up in Alabama, there was red clay earth. And that was something that was really distinct to the area. There was also a lot of limestone. And so I wanted to be able to bring in just those geographical markers. And I thought, ooh, the clay under their fingernails, as they've done this dastardly deed that maybe isn't so dastardly, would be an interesting thing to write.
Yes. And it's all, you talked earlier about that your grandmother knew that you were writing about home. What element does that have in the story as well?
Yeah, I only lived there from the time I was 4 to 9, but that's where we returned for every holiday and summer. And that's where all of my extended family was. So whenever I think of that part of the country, it's just really beautiful memories that I have of community and togetherness and people having your back, even if, they live an hour away and you only get to see them a few times a year, or if they live hundreds of miles away, as they did because we moved to California. But we were just immediately like in sync once we were back home together.
And what is, your voice, and I want to talk about this too, but your voice is very, and I can't think of another word except for Southern. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Talk a little bit about, I lived in Atlanta for 5 years, but I grew up in Indiana. So, I don't know if Atlanta is South. Talk a little bit about what that Southern, your setting is just immersive, and talk about how you write that in the story, or is it just it is the story.
Yes. So I think Atlanta is a little more cosmopolitan, probably like Houston in a lot of ways. And so North Alabama, where I grew up, was very much small town South or deep South, Bible Belt South, that kind of area. And a lot of people there, especially my relatives, my older relatives, had such unique ways of speaking. I remember when I was in high school, I read the book Christy by Catherine Marshall, and it's about a woman who goes to the Appalachian Mountains to become a teacher as a missionary. And a lot of the phrases that they were using in those mountain towns in Tennessee were the same phrases that my grandmother was using day to day. And this was like a 75-year span from that setting to knowing my grandmother. And it was just so interesting to me how the language was preserving parts of the South. And when I was writing Gran's voice, because she is in there in memories, even though she's not alive during any of the novel, my grandmother's voice was what kept echoing in my mind. And I wanted to capture her phrasing and her truisms and the way that she described the world because I think the vernacular was just so interesting to me.
And can you give us some examples of what she would say? I should have marked them in the novel. But how does she talk? How does she describe things?
She would say things like, Southern phrases like, what in tarnation, that kind of thing. But then she would also use words, vocabulary in ways that I don't use them. She would say, like, I'm so proud you came to see me. She would say things like that instead of I'm so happy you came to see me.
Yes, yes.
So it was just little inflections and changes, but very much her.
Yes, and it comes through so beautifully. And I love it when you lie. As again, we're talking about I Love It When You Lie by Kristen Bird, her second book, which is just out. And the other characters in the book, they're very of that time and of that place as well. What was it like to write those characters interacting? And it's like a little bit of a juggle, isn't it now, to write about that?
It is. And especially because you've got to think, okay, whose point of view would serve best for this particular scene if they are all together? One of my beta readers told me early on that she couldn't tell how Southern I wanted the novel to be.
Hmm.
And so one adjustment that I made through revision, and I do lots of rounds of revision when I'm writing, is I tried to make the Southern colloquialisms along a spectrum. So Tara, who has grown up there and only went away for one semester of college, she has the most Southern voice. And then we've got June, who went away to school and then came back to work there as a nurse. She's kind of moderately Southern. Then we have Clementine, who's been living in New York for the past few years, and she is less Southern in the way that she speaks. So I wanted there to be kind of a continuum that the reader would feel as they were there with the characters.
And it's fascinating. This is why Crime Time is so wonderful, because it is we might not think of that so specifically unless we were in your class. We might not think of it so specifically as how carefully you decided what each person would say. Did that help the characters come to life for you? You said you were discovering them along the way.
It did. It helped me figure out kind of what their worldview would be like as well, how they might justify things, how they might question things, their hesitations. So when it came to the death of the person who dies, which you don't find out until the end, it really affected the way that they reacted to that, depending on also who had raised them, because Clementine is the youngest. She was a baby when her parents died. So her grandmother completely raised her versus Tara, who was 11 years old when her parents died. And so she had that experience losing her parents. And then she had her grandmother raise her. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait. First of all, you all who are going to read this, Darlene says Kristen is a new author to me. Thank you for sharing. Yes, of course. That's my entire goal, is to share new authors with you. But you said earlier, I mean, I know in the book we don't know what happens, but you said you wrote but to discover the book. That's exactly how I do it as well. So I understand it. But did you know who it would be? At what point did you know who it would be?
I knew who I wanted it to be from the beginning. And when I wrote it, I was signaling too much who that person was. And
Ah,
so through a revision, I actually had to step back and find empathy for each of the men in the book and to be able to present that on the page.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
hard.
that was a challenge to me.
Yes, it is. I mean, knowing the ending, if you don't know the ending, it's kind of easier because you can't give away something that you don't know. I heard an interview with Sally Field, the actor Sally Field, talking about how when she has a script and when she's in a movie, she doesn't like to know the end when she's in the midst of filming, because she says she can't avoid playing to the end. She plays to the end because she knows it. She can't help but telegraph what it's going to be. So I hear you. I hear you on the revisions. You can mold the book to be the way you want. This is such a wonderful book club book. If any of you have book clubs, I highly recommend I Love It When You Lie for questions of morality and motherhood and sisterhood and murder and marriage and relationships and loyalty and values. What do you hope book clubs will talk about?
I hope they'll talk about the bond of sisterhood in friendship as well as in actual sister relationships. I also hope that they'll talk about the moral gray areas that the characters experience and why they decide what they decide, even if they don't completely agree with that decision. I'm hoping that they will be able to. I've talked a lot about empathy. I know, I guess it's on my mind with teaching. Empathize with the characters and relate to them in some way. And I also hope that they'll talk about the impact of generations before us and how they affect our view of the world, but also our view of ourselves, and how they help act as a moral guide for us.
I mean, the morally gray issue, I think it's interesting. I think were you all here when I talked to Megan Miranda about, was it Megan Miranda, about this, about how you don't have to, that you don't want a reader to say, I wouldn't have done that, because it's not a book about that reader. It's a book about the character. So
Right.
it's key for us as authors to reveal the motivations for why that character would do what they do, so that the reader thinks, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that, but I see why he or she did.
Right. We want to understand the character, even if we don't agree with the character. Exactly.
Exactly. This, you talk about buried secrets as well in this novel, and it's so meta because of buried secrets and someone being buried. Do you think every family has those buried secrets? I mean, that's such a thing these days as well, and then it seems to be true.
Yeah. And I think sometimes those are open secrets that we just don't talk about.
uh,
But everyone knows about them. At least I've seen that in my family. And that's always a fascinating kind of anthropological like in observance to me is, oh, everyone knows about this elephant in the room, but we're just going to keep walking around that elephant in the room instead of facing it head on. So I do think every family has secrets, but I don't know that they're always buried. I think sometimes they're more ignored than anything else.
which is another way of burying them, actually,
Right.
because we know they're there. We're just
In
not we're
plain sight.
about
Yeah.
it. Pamela says skeletons in the closet. Yes, I think every family has
Mhm.
them. Did you always want to be a writer?
I always wanted to write in some way. I actually won a contest when I was in 3rd grade with a team of students where we got to publish a little picture book with a local printing press in Albertville, Alabama.
Oh,
And that was very exciting for me. Um, After that, I thought that I might want to be a journalist. And so I actually got a degree in mass media, and we had to double major at the school. And I was 17 when I was picking my major. So I was like, I'll be a music major too. I like music. I didn't really know what I was doing, as a lot of 17-year-olds don't. So I actually went back and got my degree, my master's in literature in my mid 20s. And I had to write a creative writing thesis, or that was one of my options, and that's what I chose to do. And that's when I knew that I wanted to write novels. And then, of course, life got in the way. I got a job, I had 3 kids, and I didn't really start writing seriously again until my twins were 2 years old. And then I needed an outlet that was just time for me to go sit at a shop and write for an hour or two every week. And so that's really when the love of writing came back for me. My twins just turned 10. So that's been about 8 years that I've been writing more seriously. And as they've gotten older, I've been able to write for longer bouts of time. And The Night She Went Missing was actually, I started writing that when they were 6 years old. And then it was published when they were just turning 9.
Did
So,
they get it that their mom was a famous author?
oh, they're very excited about it. Yes, it's really cute. They're still at the age that anything I do is cool, even
Oh,
like dancing and stuff. So I
oh.
know that's going to change in like 2 years, but I'm hanging on to it.
What was that book that you wrote as a little kid? Do you remember what it was called?
I don't remember the title, but it was about a mouse who went on an adventure, had a tiny little car. It was kind of Stuart Little-esque a little bit. And he was being chased, I believe, by a cat. It was very simple, but I was so proud that it got chosen as the winner.
And that was so when that was printed, that was the first book of yours that you ever saw.
Yeah.
And when these came out of the box, Sherry says starting early, and then we'll take your questions, you all, in about 30 seconds. So make sure that you leave a question for Kristen. This is your second book, but it doesn't get old, right? When you opened the box and saw this.
Yeah, I actually had my 13-year-old take a video of me opening the box. And I tried to do one of those unboxing videos. You can actually see it on my Instagram account at Kristen Bird Writes. And I had to try 4 different times because I couldn't get it open. And so it became kind of a humorous moment. But yeah, just that thrill of seeing your writing in print. I don't think it'll ever get old.
What do your students think about you being an author?
They are very excited for me and they like to take pictures with my books. Some of the older kids will actually read it and then come back and tell me about it. My 9th graders have not read it yet, but I tell them that's okay and maybe they can give it to their moms.
Yes, you can buy one and give it to your moms. Very good, very good. Let's look at the questions, and then I have millions of more questions for you. But I know we have some questions. Oh, there we go, Leisha. I'm just going to check and see. Okay, Leisha says, "Who has been your hardest character to write about, and why?"
Yeah. Oh gosh, I think that for this book, the hardest character emotionally was probably June. Like I said, she's the second sister. She struggled with infertility, and my husband and I did as well. And that's not something that a lot of people with kids talk about because they already have their kids. But we did IVF to have all 3 of our girls, and we went through IUI and Clomid and all of that beforehand. So I think that emotionally, that one, I think I was tapping into the deepest well in order to get that story on the page, but it was also very cathartic for me. So it wasn't hard in the sense that I didn't want to do it. It was just, it took a little more space, I think, for me to get her story on the page, because in a lot of ways it was the story that we had experienced. So
Well,
I'm glad I could write it.
the scene where she's contemplating this and then realizing that she could maybe do this is really quite chilling and quite engaging. Let me go before we take the next question. I would love to ask you. I love this title. Mm-hmm. It's so sinister because it's so duplicitous and so full of mind games. Was this always the title, and how did you choose it?
It was not always the title. When I was writing it, the title was Some Glad Morning, which is the very opening to the hymn I'll Fly Away, which is Gran's favorite hymn, and it's the one that is sung at her funeral. And I thought Some Glad Morning was kind of a clever play because it's the early morning hours when they bury the man that they choose to bury. And that is a glad morning for them, but not for him. And then as I was reading through one of my late drafts, I came across the line that one character says to another when they're trying to have some kind of reconciliation. And she jokingly says, "I love it when you lie to me." But part of the question is, how much of a joke is that? And then also it's a play, of course, on this man lying in the grave.
And so when you realized that was the title, did you get goosebumps?
I probably did. It was one of those things that as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, this is it. Like, it just felt right. And I didn't have that experience with my first novel. It was like pulling teeth to get the title of The Night She Went Missing. So this one, it was nice to have kind of that settled feeling once I came across of it.
And it's instant conflict because you're not supposed to love it when somebody lies.
Right. There's a
So
tension within the title itself.
exactly. I completely agree. Sherry Steuben has a question. Oh, is this an audiobook? Says Sherry. That's a great question, because did you get to pick the narrator, and is there an accent? Are there accents?
Yes, there's actually a cast of women who are my audio narrators. I got to pick all of them, which was so exciting. Megan Tusing did my first book, and so she plays June in the second book. And I specifically requested that she play that part because she has a lot of gravity and almost like this beautiful darkness to her voice. She sounds much older than she actually is, and I wanted June to have that kind of feel. She's an old soul in a lot of ways. And then the other ladies, they sent me a list of people that I could choose from, and I moved them all around and said, I would like this person to be Tara, this person to be Clementine. This is my first, second, third choice. So I had about 20 different women that I was listening to and deciding on. And then they do have Southern accents. The three Southerners do, and then Stephanie is different. The women they did such an outstanding job with this audio. It's a beautiful cast.
It sounds like it would be so much fun to
Yeah.
listen to. I mean, sometimes, as authors, you hear a book in your head, you hear the voices in your head, certainly for a year or however long it takes you to write it. And then sometimes translating it to the audiobook is sort of a leap, because then it's not the voice you heard, but this is your book, you feel.
Yes, I was very happy when they sent me the link a few weeks before publication. The first thing I did is I listened to about a minute of each voice, and I said, okay, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. And then I went back and I listened to longer snippets of it.
That's wonderful. We're talking about I Love It When You Lie, which is available, of course, in a book, in a physical book, and also, as we're talking about, in an audiobook. So run right out and get it. But there's one more question that I would love to know. Sherry also asks, do you have a book club kit?
Yes, I do have a book club kit, and I actually just posted the link to it on my Instagram profile. You can also see it at Mira, which is my publisher, at their website, if you Google Mira and book club kit. And it has a letter from me in it. It has my Granny Doggette's banana pudding recipe that you should definitely serve warm, which I know some people think is strange, but trust me, it's delicious. It has photographs of women from my family that I base this on, as well as a photograph of the graves at Decoration Sunday in North Alabama, which is a tradition that this book is set around.
How heartwarming is it? How wonderful is it to think about groups of women in book clubs, mostly women, sitting around reading your book and then discussing what you wrote?
Yes, I have a few on my calendar for late April, early May, and I'm so excited to meet with them. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually, as an author, is to meet with readers. And one of those book club groups is my mom and her friends. And she's going to make her mother's banana pudding recipe. And that's the one I'm probably looking forward to the most, is just being with her and her friends.
That's great. I didn't know about the banana pudding controversy, which sounds like a good book title, I have to say, the banana pudding controversy.
Yes.
Well, people think
mystery.
That could be your next book. We'll talk about that another time. We have gone over our time. Is there one more question, Karen, in the back room? Are you seeing one more question? There's mostly just adulation. I want you to know that Megan McClendon says, Kristen's writing is amazing, with many exclamation marks. So that is wonderful. And Sherry is asking how you are celebrating.
Yeah, I went on a small book tour. I got to go to a couple of my favorite bookstores, Murder by the Book in Houston and then Fabled in Waco. So if you're ever in one of those cities, I would highly recommend it. I also got to go to New Orleans to Blue Cypress Books, which I had never been to before, but is also now one of my new favorite. I love visiting indie bookstores and local libraries. That and coffee shops are my favorite places to go. And then hanging out with family.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations. It is a marvelous book. It's immersive. It's gorgeous. It's surprising. It's beautiful. It's thought-provoking. If you have a book club, this is the perfect book club book. And we have posted the link to Kristen Bird's book club kit. So you all just download that and decide on your own banana pudding if you want it warm or hot. Doesn't matter. Does it have vanilla wafers?
It does. It does. And then it has the meringue on top.
Okay, I'm starving now, you all starving. So before I go have lunch, let's give away a copy of Kristen Bird's book. We will spin the wheel of fun and see who wins this book. Look at everyone who came today. So nice to see you all. And the winner is Shannon Hansen. Oh my golly, Shannon Hansen, who is who I call Shanson. I once I was trying to say her name and I couldn't say it, so I said Shanson, and that was 3 years ago. So now she's forever Shanson, and she is a marvelous reader and very, very lucky woman to get a copy of I Love It When You Lie. So Shanson, you email me and I will get you this book. Kristen, thank you for being here today. I hope you had
Thank
fun.
you. I've loved being here. It's a pleasure speaking with you.
You too. Thank you. Good luck with the book. And you all, our 4 o'clock interview is being postponed. Jessa Maxwell cannot be here today, but we love her. And I want you to see her book, The Golden Spoon, which is sort of the British baking show meets Only Murders in the Building, meets Agatha Christie, meets Clue. It's fabulous. It's hilarious. It's a page turner. If you watch baking shows, I'm not sure they make banana pudding in the Golden Spoon, but they make a lot of other stuff. It's hilarious. It's wonderful. Go, go, go and get The Golden Spoon, Jessa Maxwell's debut novel. She will be here on Crime Time as soon as we can get her here. Meanwhile, next week at 4 p.m. ET here on Crime Time on Tuesday, we'll have How I'll Kill You. Maybe the Williams sisters read this. How I'll Kill You by Ren DeStefano. And I cannot wait to read this. This is next on my list. So I hope you will join us next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET for Crime Time. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time.